Good day, and welcome to A Place Called Through. I'm your host, Patricia Wade Goings. I am the author of Willpower, The Call to Rise Above. We're broadcasting today live from WYTV7 Christian Broadcasters Network. Today we're going to talk about substance abuse. Let me tell you that WYTV7 Christian Broadcasters Network and A Place Called Through, we share real stories of real people going through everyday life situations. Together, we empower, we encourage, and we inspire people all across the globe. So we ask just one thing from you. In spite of just staying tuned to us, we want you to do us something. Help us make this pledge for our mission of hope. And we do that by your charitable donations. So today, I ask you, please give. Help us support and continue our mission of hope. Our hearts are full of compassion for what we do, and we want to spread this across the globe. Today, we're welcoming as our guest our author of Remade, Finding Freedom, Miss Nicole Byram. She is a licensed marriage and family therapist, and we're going to talk to her today about substance abuse as it relates to today, COVID-19, and some upcoming things that we want to talk about and how it affects the families. Welcome to A Place Called Through, Ms. Byram.
Hello, thank you so much for having me today.
We thank you for joining us today at A Place Called Through. And as we stated, we want to talk a little bit about what seems to be a growing thing, this substance abuse. And today, you know, it's sad, but it is reality that we are dealing with COVID-19. And this has great influences on many people, on the changing of their lifestyles, the effects it does have on the family. So would you kind of like highlight us on where you are in your practice and what you're seeing? Because we understand that your practice deals with women who are mostly affected by substance abuse. So can you kind of tell us what kind of effects your practice is having with these women who unfortunately are dealing with substance abuse?
Yes, thank you so much. Yeah, absolutely. The pandemic, COVID-19 has flipped everything for everybody, and especially for those in recovery. The challenge has been great for sure. And one thing that has been kind of neat, I guess, to see in that is the innovative ways that people are still able to connect. So for, I know our agency over the quarantine time, we were not seeing clients in the office. So rather we were doing more meetings like this. And so I was just so thankful that we were able to continue our programming, to continue our IOP, our intensive outpatient groups throughout the entirety of the quarantine. So definitely the technology was helpful with that. I know other meetings, AA, 12-step meetings, they've been able to do similar things with the online meetings. And I think more now than ever, that connection is needed for everybody, but especially for those in recovery, to be able to maintain, oh my gosh, just that connection, that bond with other people has been huge.
So in light of the fact that COVID-19 is real, it's here, and of course it's going to be around for a while, sadly. We wish that it was not even here, but it is in existence. So such as substance abuse is reality. In your practice then, what is, I guess, the most challenge that you have now because of the social distances that you're not really able to reach people face to face or maybe as often as you normally would? What are some of the challenges that you're having to face, and how do you conquer those challenges in getting that support system to your people that you are dealing with?
Yeah, and I think the boredom factor and just the mental health aspect of being locked down and just unable to do life as normal, I think those are huge challenges. I think just people's moods being down and being bored, those are huge triggers for people in recovery. And so, yeah, absolutely. I think, like I said, the online meetings have been crucial for that. I think it's important to shift focus to not on what you can't do, but on what you can do. And so for some people, it is maybe learning to develop a new hobby, maybe to take that initiative to reach out even more than ever to their supports, or to get a sponsor, and if they haven't already, to start those relationships. But yeah, it is just definitely a challenging time for sure. And I think taking care of, like I said, our mental health, for so many, addiction and mental health go hand in hand. So if we're able to do that, if we're able to do the things to keep ourselves healthy, physically, mentally, socially, spiritually, in all the ways, that definitely helps to combat some of those depression symptoms, the low mood, and just to be able to stay in a good place recovery-wise.
And we noted that in your book, Remake Finding Freedom, the freedom that you reference is finding Christ in a new way, a new journey, a new day, a new walk. So can you tell us, with the social distancing as it is, how are you still able to empower the women who you referenced, that your book talks about the recovery stages of? How do we get these people to get to that point when they're already dealing with being a victim of substance abuse? And it's even been noted by the National Institute on Substance Abuse that substance abuse has been found from people, from children, starting from the ages of 12 on up. These abuses are inclusive of things, alcohol, cocaine, even prescription drugs. So how do you get them from this point into the spiritual path, into this spiritual journey during such a time as the pandemic, where 99% of everything that we do every day has been affected by COVID-19?
Mm-hmm. Yes, it is amazing. When I look at the ages of when using first begins, it seems like it's getting younger and younger all the time, and with harder and heavier substances as well. And I think this pandemic time, maybe is an opportunity for people to shift their focus to maybe a spiritual realm that maybe they haven't considered, because I think this does bring on a lot of questions as to, like, why is this happening? What good can come from this? People are asking a lot of questions, and I think this is a great time for a lot of people to dive into pursuing a relationship with God. And in chapter 4 of my book, I actually have a chapter on friendship, because that is such a challenge that I have seen women go through in their recovery. It's very difficult to, relearn and to rebuild healthy friendships, healthy relationships. And so chapter 4 of my book talks about some 4 key qualities to look in people to, make those healthy friendships. But also, and most importantly, I talk about how Christ fulfills those 4 things perfectly. And I really do think this is a time to shift focus for a lot of people to the spiritual realm. And it's interesting that with so many churches being kind of forced into doing the online services, I think that has actually brought in more people, and maybe more people who wouldn't be as likely to attend, like go to a physical church, might be more likely to check something out online. And we've seen that, like even in my own church, I know the numbers of the online attendance has just like skyrocketed even after we've reopened. So I definitely think this is a great time for people just to connect in that way, and to maybe start to question and seek some answers spiritually to those questions.
So what you're seeing in your practice as you are dealing with these women and helping them to cope and prayerfully getting into a new journey of life, and freeing themselves of a deadly thing, because we all know that substance abuse is deadly. It takes many forms on you mentally as well as the physical aspect. Finding freedom in Christ for someone who actually does not know Christ, someone that may have come from a substance abuse family, may have been using, substance abuse themselves for so many years. How do you encourage them now to get onto the straight path of life, into a newness, outside of the fact that, okay, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life? How do you convince someone who knows not of Christ, and they're trying to be free, they want to be free? What would you say to some of our listeners or our viewers today that may actually be listening to us and they're saying, wow, that is something to think about? What would you, and how would you encourage that person to free themselves?
Yeah, such a great question. One of my favorite verses is in Galatians chapter 5, verse 1, and it says, "It is for freedom that Christ has set us free." And for somebody in addiction, man, that you feel that's the opposite of free. You know, life like that addiction has just got you. And just to know that there is hope in Jesus, that you can be free not only from your addiction, but free in Him, free from sin, free from guilt and shame. I talk about that in chapter 3 as well. Probably one of my favorite chapters, actually. But yeah, just that freedom that comes from knowing that He loves us, you know, that God is our Father. That's chapter 2, and that He sent His Son to die for us, to take our guilt and our shame, and to be our Savior. And also, like I said in chapter 4, to be our friend. And when we find our identity in Him, when we know that we are loved and chosen and forgiven and redeemed, that changes how we see ourselves, and that changes how we live our life. You know, it is not a performance-based, you know, oh, I hope I'm good enough to get into heaven kind of thing. Like, we can know with full assurance that we are going to be with Him someday, and that while we are still here on this earth, like, He will continue to be with us, and that He will work all things for our good and His glory. And that is like the hope that sustains us in this world, whether it's through the pandemic or through addiction. Just to have that relationship with Christ is truly freeing.
That's awesome. Finding Freedom. The book is entitled Remake. We're going to take a break for a commercial, but stay tuned. We'll come back and we'll discuss with Ms. Byron more about the effects of COVID-19 and mental health and substance abuse, and the effects on the total family as we face these challenging days, with many using substances from various situations to different changes in life. Stay tuned. Come back to us. I'm your host, Patricia Gong. You're watching A Place Called Through.
Mr. Happy Living here. I love good things made by good people. That's why I love my Relax Sauna. I bask in its healing far infrared rays every morning. In just 20 minutes, I sweat as much as if I'd run 4 miles. But I'm not exhausted. Instead, I feel great. And I've boosted my metabolism, burned calories, sweated away toxins, and some body fat too. What a relaxing and healthy way to start a day. A study in Finland found people who regularly use saunas live longer and have fewer fatal heart problems. So get the benefits of a sauna in your home for your family too. It's surprisingly affordable, it's portable, and it fits nearly anywhere. Go to happyliving.com and select Partners in Happy to get $100 off any purchase of $1,000 or more. And I'll donate another $100 for every order placed during the entire month of December to WYTV7. So here's my idea for you. Get a relaxed sauna for yourself this holiday season and give another as a gift.
And we're back with Miss Nicole Byram today, who is our licensed therapist on mental health. She is also a licensed family therapist, and we want to talk more today with her about substance abuse. We were discussing earlier the effects of substance abuse and on mental health and how it breaks up families. So we want to continue into that format about how substance abuse, the effects it has on the total family, friends and family, and those closest to you. We were also discussing, finding freedom, this new life, and how we can get into this new life in the meaning of having a new life. So we want to continue with Ms. Byron, and we're going to, pick up again. We're talking about the effects of substance abuse on the total family.
Yeah, we have definitely seen more conflict within marriages, more conflict within the families. We know rates of domestic violence and divorce are up right now. It is just a challenging time to be together so much and to have to learn how to do school at home for many parents. That has been such a disruption of routine and just something that is totally foreign, and to kind of be thrown into it, especially in the past spring, it just was this huge upheaval. So yeah, definitely conflict within families. We've seen a lot of that for sure.
And I would imagine that, the magnitude, it's really horrendous on the family because no one wants to see a family member or even a friend closest to them suffering from something that can be as deadly. And knowing that it is a deadly situation, in your practice, are you talking to the families as well to help these people come through this process?
Yeah, a lot of what we work on with families and couples is some basic communication skills. And it sounds simple, but sometimes it's the simple things that we need to get back to. And so even having ground rules for how we're going to communicate, that we're not going to call names. And if we, a lot of self-monitoring, like, okay, when I feel myself getting to the point, a certain point that I know my body's telling me that I'm getting angry, okay, we need to learn how to calm that down. We need to take breaks from, our time together, and it's okay to kind of go separate ways for a minute. And even just getting back to some of those basic skills can be really important and really helpful. I teach assertive communication and learning how to express, your feelings, your needs, your wants in a very direct but respectful way. And just some of those skills are really, really important during this time. And then, of course, we also talk about, just like I kind of mentioned before, just very much regulating, being aware of your own emotions, to kind of check in with yourself, identify, okay, today I'm feeling a little anxious, or today I'm just really bored, I need to get out of the house. I'm just feeling irritable. The more that we can be aware of that, and just being able to take care of our own selves, especially as parents, right? Taking care of ourselves so that we can be good models of that for our kids, but also then just to be able to interact with them the best way that we can.
And so in other words, in the therapy, what we're looking at is setting goals, obtainable goals, for measurable outcomes here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. And I think that is a very good way to think about it, because I think that's something that people need right now. They need to feel like, okay, we're moving in a positive direction, and we need to focus on what we can control, because we cannot control COVID-19. We can't control what the state's going to regulate or not regulate. Like, that's beyond us. But what we can control is how we handle our own selves. I can control, okay, my brain, and I need to take a break, and I can control that. And I can choose how I speak to you. I can control that. And so when we realize that we can, that is really empowering. And yeah, absolutely, to set those goals and to work towards something, to feel a degree of accomplishment with that, I think that's really important, always, but especially right now.
And I know that we talked a few minutes ago about, incorporating the family, but there are certain times in therapy, you may not need to incorporate the family, because it's really about that individual that's trying to come through this, horrendous process. The family, I believe, comes in as the will of whomever you're in therapy with, because of the confidentiality, and maybe it may be something that they really don't want known, which could possibly hinder, I believe, some of their successes in this recovery process. So sometimes, we have to weigh that confidentiality part in the recovery process as well, in order to help this person see that, okay, we're going to set these goals together. We're going to make sure that this is plan A, and we also have a plan B. Whichever works best for you, though, that's the one that we're going for, because recovery is what's most important here. We want to make sure that you're healed and that you've been set free by this. So I think that, when we look at the whole family makeup here, we have to be sure that there's one thing, the common goal is the confidentiality, and that it is a healing process for this person that is going through this. And it's just like COVID-19. Everybody's faced with it, one way or the other, because a friend or someone that or family member may or may, have been affected by this thing. I mean, in a physical sense, because it is too a deadly, situation here. So we have to respect one another as we go through whatever our processes are. And most importantly, as Christ-like, and because this is where your living to freedom is, to be like Christ, like who He created you to be. One of the other things is that we're noting too that more women are affected by substance abuse. Can you kind of highlight us on what's really going on here with the women? Why are we the ones that seem to be in such situations?
I think a huge factor for women and substance abuse is trauma, underlying trauma. We know that approximately 80% of women, of adult women with substance use disorders, have a history of some form of trauma, whether that's in childhood or whether that's in adulthood, something traumatic or some domestic violence, for instance. So often those two go hand in hand, unhealthy relationships and addiction. And that stat to me is just like, you can't ignore that. And that actually, I write about that in chapter 5 of Remade Living Free. And here's the book. But I write about that in the chapter about God as our ultimate healer, because for women, that history of trauma, and particularly sexual abuse, that history is very, very prevalent for substance abusing women, and that has to be addressed as well. Therapy, treatment for substance use disorder has to encompass all of that. It's important to look at, of course, having support and being able to know your triggers and having coping skills and all of those good, necessary things. But if there's trauma in a woman's past, like, that absolutely has to be addressed. Otherwise, it will just kind of keep manifesting and reoccurring, other disorders, mental health, or other addictions, other unhealthy behaviors. So yeah, that absolutely has to be looked at.
And it's also noticed that women deal with substance abuse a little bit different from men. It affects them, I would say, differently, whereas it has been noted by the National Institute of Substance Abuse that women face death, I guess, more rapidly than men do when, they're this victim of substance abuse. It's a little bit harder for them. Their coping mechanisms are so much different from the men. Can you kind of highlight us on that, if you may?
Yeah. So for women, I see such an issue with what you're describing. I think that connects to that guilt and shame that they feel. And again, I wrote about that in chapter 3, because that is just a huge, huge thing. Women in their addiction experience so much shame, not only because of their addiction, but often because of the things that they do in their addiction, things that they compromise their standards, things that maybe they do for their substance, behaviors like that. They steal a lot of times, people, to keep their addictions going. Somehow they're very manipulative, or they steal, in order to get the money that they need for their substance. So I think for women, that internalizing of that shame is, and especially if a woman has had her child or her children removed from her care because of a substance use disorder, that burden of guilt and shame from that is tremendous.
That is just amazing. Looks like we're about to run out of time, and I want to wrap up and let you take it back to your book.
Sure.
But I want to make note too that I've noted also in the study from the National Institute of Substance Abuse, women tend to die more from substance abuse, as well as they were the ones that were going to the ER. For strange reasons, women initially were not even included in the study for substance abuse because of their biological beings. So these are things that, really make us want to be more aware of it. And I encourage anybody or anyone that knows someone that's going through, if you're a victim yourself, please reach out for help. Help is available to you from the National Institute of Substance Abuse, and they do have phone numbers and websites that you can get help. Ms. Bynum, I thank you for being my guest today, and I want you to go ahead and recap on your book, tell people how they can find you and reach out to you for help.
Sure. So the book is called Remade Living Free,
And I basically just kind of wrote a book for women in recovery from addiction and or unhealthy relationships that just encompasses everything that I have seen women struggle with as they go through the recovery process, but from a biblical perspective. And so I think that's what sets this book apart, maybe from some other books on substance abuse recovery. I deal with topics of guilt and shame, friendship, purpose, God is our Father and our healer, how to have abundant life and not compromise, and just how to have perseverance. So I think just those topics make it a little bit unique. It's a different twist on recovery, and just like I said, from a very biblical perspective. And I loved writing it. It's available on Amazon in either the paperback version, or if you're an e-reader, it's available on the Kindle e-version as well. I also have a website. It's just my name, NicoleByram.com. And on the website, I have a blog, which I love writing. I was really sad when my book was done and I had to send it to my editor. So I started a blog just because I loved writing so much. And again, that blog kind of touches on topics relating to parenting, relationships, just kind of just your spiritual walk. So yeah, you can check that out. And also I do have a podcast. It's called 5 Minute Word, and that's under the media section of my website as well. And it's just like it sounds. It's like 5 minutes, and it's more or less a podcast. It's a verbal devotional, I would say, is a good way to describe it. So I just take a scripture and just kind of talk about that for a few minutes. And yeah, those are the things that I love to do. So that's NicoleByram.com, and the book is Remade Living Free, available on Amazon.
We certainly thank you. To our listeners and our viewers, be sure to visit Nicole Byram on her website, Nicole Byram, for more information about her book, tune into her podcast, and to her blog. Of course, I invite you to come back to A Place Called Through. I am your host, Patricia Wade Goings, and we're broadcasting from WYTV7, Christian Broadcasters Network. Again, I am the author of Willpower, The Call to Rise Above. I encourage you to use what's given to you, that power to rise above all circumstances. Again, I ask that you go to A Place Called Through. You can find us on Facebook at A Place Called Through, at Willpower, The Call to Rise Above. In order to be on our show, we ask that you just simply call us at area code 843-608-9744, or you may send me an email, and that is at pgoingswp@gmail.com. Also visit the website for WYTV7.org to make your charitable contributions. Again, we do thank you. We hope that you'll stay tuned and come back and visit us again. Have a blessed day.